control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today we are talking about an episode of The Night Gallery. Now, we're talking about Season 2, Episode 16. It first aired on January the 12th, 1972, and there are 3 stories within this particular collection. One written by Rod Serling, one written by Jack Laird, and one written by Stanford Whitmore, which was an adaptation from another story. And I have to say, this one in particular is very reasonably high quality. None of them are really outstanding, but they're all good, all of them. So that is quite nice because Night Gallery can be quite patchy in places. When it hits the high points, it's fantastic, but there's quite a lot of low points. But this actually delivered quite well in different ways. The first story is called Lindeman's Catch, directed by Jeff Corey, written by Rod Serling, and it's got and I have to say, a very nice piece of writing and acting throughout. Interestingly, when I was thinking about this, for some reason I thought it was a Lovecraft story, and in fact it isn't. However, it is set amongst fishermen who live in New England, and it's a fishing town in New England. So it's very H.P. Lovecraft from that respect. But this involves, it starts off in like a little sort of bar on the front, a little sort of sailor's bar, where there's a man trying to sort of sell things. I think he's a drinker, and he's trying to sell knickknacks and ability to read palms and stuff like that. And in comes Lindeman. Now, this is played by Stuart Whitman in a suitable, old sea dog kind of way, grumpy, gruff, a touch of the Captain Ahab's about it for sure. So that's kind of interesting. Now, it all starts with, this very angry, gruff man, and this guy that's trying to sort of sell things to people. He approaches Lindeman, who basically gives him a bit of a thrashing, really, when it comes down to it. And then he goes off. But he does find, the boat doesn't go out to sea, but his crew do find in their nets a mermaid. Now, it's interesting this because mermaids, there's quite a few stories about mermaids and human men and stuff like that. If you, from The Little Mermaid and Splash, recent films dealing with it are things like kind of suggesting it at The Lighthouse, and also actually doing it. There's a film called Cold Skin, which I think came out in 2017, about 2 men in a lighthouse on possible actual mer people, and their dealings with those in a dark way. And this is one of those. This is kind of a precursor to all of these in a way. Obviously not a precursor to the original story, The Little Mermaid, which was written way before, but it's riffing on that story, I guess. And she's in there, and she's. They filmed her in a very interesting way. She doesn't talk, she just moves and gestures, but they film it at very weird angles, and so you don't kind of get her form that well. But she is a woman on top and a fish on the bottom, and you kind of see the towel, and you see her kind of gesturing to Lindeman. Lindeman at first is really angry, wants to kill it, but then the crew start saying, well, people would pay good money to see a live mermaid and all this. But then Lindeman sort of has a change of heart the way it's gesturing to him. He's creating a rapport. And he gets it cut free and takes it down to his cabin. And then nothing happens for 3 days. He calls the doctor, who I think we saw earlier in the bar, who comes and sort of says, "It's been out to sea too long. You've got to throw it back. It's dying." But then he kind of starts talking about how lonely he is. So this is a tale of anger and loneliness, really. And he thinks he's found a companion. But unfortunately, him keeping her there is causing her to die. Now, the dodgy bloke who was trying to sell things, and I can't remember the name of the actor, but it was well acted too, sort of convinces Lindemann he can sell him a potion that will give her 2 legs by dawn. And Lindemann is desperate, and so he goes along. He believes him, basically, and pays for the potion. Gives the potion to this creature. And the next morning, everyone's aghast. He's hoping that something's worked, and the first thing they see is her legs. So she has now got human legs. But the twist is this. When she fully emerges, she's got her top half is now a fish, a giant fish. Doesn't look great, but you go with it because it's kind of really effective up to this point. And she's clearly gasping, and she goes and jumps straight in the water. Lindemann jumps in after her, and we don't see him again. They both disappear beneath the waves. Presumably, he may have drowned, or I don't know. You know, it's kind of a bit ambiguous. Not very, but a bit. And there the tale ends. An interesting one, this. And in some respects, quite difficult to shoot. Jeff Corey, for example, found it really difficult to cast because they were aware that the mermaid would effectively be topless. And he had like certain questions he had to ask actresses they were auditioning about that, and he said, "Yeah, I had all these questions and they were really awkward, but the one I refused to ask was asking them what size their bra cups were, because that was one of the ones on his list, or given to him that was on his list. He refused to ask that, but they found an actress, Annabelle Garth, who, though she doesn't speak, does a good job, who was sort of game. While she was topless, they had to make it suitable for TV, so they had to arrange her hair to cover her breasts and stick it down. And when they shot a lot of her scenes, it was a night shoot and it was very cold, and she was in water or exposed. And Jeff Corey again did not like this. He was constantly apologising to her about the conditions of the shoot, and she was saying it's okay. And apparently afterwards she got bronchitis from this shoot. But Jeff Corey appears to have approached it with, some decency. Let's put it that way. So from that respect, it's kind of nice to know that even back early then there were some human beings with decency about them in the film business, in the TV business. And I'm sure there were lots. We just hear about the bad ones. She also, when the footage was all shot, the executives demanded to see it because they wanted to make sure the breasts wouldn't be shown, and they were looking for nipples, in effect. And apparently at one point they said, I think I can see a nipple there, and there was a certain close-up, and they were like discussing they had to blow it up and re-examine it. And apparently it was just a bit of rough elbow. But it looked a bit like a nipple from a certain way. But that took days to sort out as well. So all around, it was a bit of a weird history to this particular story segment. But good segment all around. Jeff Corey directed well. Nice piece of writing from Rod Serling. Stuart Whitman was particularly good. And I think the dodgy bloke was played by Harry Towns. That was good too. The next segment was called The Late Mr. Pennington. Now, this was also directed by Jeff Corey, and it's got that look. He's got that slightly hazy look that Jeff Corey does. He's quite good at shooting this kind of thing. But this one was written by Jack Laird. Jack Laird, who... and it's kind of a comedy, macabre comedy section. EC Comics kind of thing. Which Jack Laird kind of did a lot. Mostly unsuccessfully, but there are some spectacularly good hits as well. I'm thinking specifically of The Phantom of What Opera. That was such a good segment. And it's essentially a woman played by Kim Hunter. Kim Hunter's probably most famous for playing Zyra in the Planet of the Apes movies. And she's talking to Harry Morgan. Harry Morgan's a sort of famous character actor. He was probably best known for being in the later seasons of MASH as the guy that run the camp. I can't remember his name. The major or whatever it was that ran the MASH unit. But he's been in various other things. A lot of 60s dramas. I think he was in Inherit the Wind, for example, and things like that. He often plays a judge as well. Anyway, him and Kim Hunter are sort of talking about a funeral, how cheap she can get it, and she explains why it's so cheap. Basically, her husband's only given her an allowance for 2 years of a very small amount, but if the insurance, if he dies by accident, she gets double indemnity, which is double that amount, $4,000, which isn't much, but that explains why she needs to find the cheapest possible, and then negotiating. She's explaining, it was very tragic. He came home, but there was a loose balcony, and workmen had replaced it. But he was away on a business trip. But when he came back, he went out on the balcony and fell to his death. And we actually see a shot of this while she's talking about it, which is kind of funny. So they resolve on a price, very, very cheap price. When she leaves, his embalmer, who's played by a very young Randy Quaid. It's very odd to see Randy Quaid as something like this. He sort of says, "Why didn't she ask us to go get the remains?" And the Undertaker's like, no, you don't understand. She wasn't just looking for a cheap funeral. She was shopping. And there is some earlier dialogue indicating she's been all over town for different sort of undertakers to get the best possible price. She was shopping. And the implication there is she's not actually committed the murder at that point. She's just trying to make sure she can afford the funeral before she continues. And then we see a shot of the man fall into his death. So that's kind of a funny twist. And it's kind of fun. It was based on a short story by someone called Frank Sisk called The Flat Mail. There you go. The late Mr. Paddington. Right, the third and final segment was directed by Jenna Schwach, who I always mangle that name. I'm never quite sure how to say it. But probably most famous for directing Jaws 2, but he did a lot of Night Gallery and TV movies as well. Written by Stanford Whitmore. Based on a story called The Fur Brooch by Dulcie Gray. And this one's called A Feast of Blood. Now, this stars a young Sandra Locke and Norman Lloyd are the main characters. Norman Lloyd's an older man who's trying to woo her. She is not interested. He gives her a small, weird little fur brooch with like it looks like a little mouse or something. Weird looking mouse or shrew. And he explains, oh no, this is based on this particular animal. It even grips with its legs so you can't shake it off. And she's sort of saying, you talk about it like it's almost alive. Anyway, he keeps going on strong and she's kind of sort of saying, no, I'm not interested. But then he stops the car halfway and sort of says, come now, a kiss, surely, all this. And she's like, I'd rather be dead to stay in the car with you. And he's like, so be it. Now he has given her this brooch, so as she's walking off, the brooch kind of comes to life and attacks her. So she's been chased by a brooch. Meanwhile, I should have said, he's taken us dinner. He wants to go to a casino, and she's not interested. But he's insisting they go, and all this, that, and the other. That happens just before. And then after the shot of her running from the whatever it is, we see him presumably in the casino talking to another young lady who's not really interested, but he says, look, such beauty deserves to be rewarded, and he gives her a fur brooch. So this guy's a serial killer of young women who spurn him. So yeah, that's the story. So again, a kind of macabre and fun one. Sandra Locke's really good in this. I'm usually find her a bit cloying, but no, she was good in this, and she has been quite good in a number of Night Gallery segments we've discussed, I think. But she is pretty damn good in this. Does the part well, very convincing. So I enjoyed all three of these. I think it's a solid episode all round. Nothing outstanding, nothing particularly memorable. Of all of these, I'm probably going to remember Lindeman's Catch the most, but nothing massively outstanding. But actually, the late Mr. Pennington was actually a good turn, as written by Jack Laird, which and the comedy works in it quite well delivered. Apparently, for that segment, they actually originally wanted to cast John Gielgud, which is so weird to think about him being in something like this. But he may have been. And apparently he turned it down because he decided not to do it because he'd already done a few Undertakers in TV things recently. So he didn't want to get like doing the same thing over and over. So yeah, there was that. So a solid episode all round. A strong recommend from me. So I will now say goodbye. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to